I randomized everything I possibly could in Dark Souls 2. The enemies, random. The bosses, random. The items and key items? Well, the items are randomized, but the key items couldn't be because the mods, well, they kiss and they get along and whatever, but they don't use softlock protection. However, the fog gates, those are random too. My goal is to traverse this new labyrinth that Dark Souls 2 has to offer, make my way to the Throne of Want, dethrone Nashandra, and make Shanalot proud. Before I even make my character, I get my things straight up betwixted by the fresh new group of foes on my way to Grandma's house, and I can already tell this is gonna be a hoot. Rar XD makes a long-awaited comeback, so random, and I pick the Explorer class, who starts with a hand axe, the boob shield, and the dexterity ring. After that, I somehow managed to make a character paler than myself, and I'm on my way. I decided that it would be best to set up home base in Majula before braving any fog gates, so I said enchanté to the Emerald Herald, and then paid a little visit to all my favorite friends around the campfire. There were some goodies on sale, but I am broke, so I scrounged up for any free items I could find, and then traversed the first fog. The memory of Jeg offered me a soul of a giant, and then a one-way ticket to the Forest of Fallen Giants. Not too shabby if you ask me. I picked up a few goodies around the area in the forest and attempted a bit of parkour before going through the flaming cave that is much less scary in a randomizer. Or maybe just as scary, but for different reasons. I expertly jumped through a hole in the wall and quickly learned that the enemies are scaled to the area, yes, but the special attacks, the magic, the fire, lightning, other elemental shenanigans that they have up their sleeves are not scaled and actually do full damage. So fun. Getting to the Forest of Fallen Giants this early, though, was gonna set me up for success. I just had to make my way to the Cardinal Tower bonfire so I could get infinite crack rocks from good old Merchant Hag Malencia. I got my bonfire, drained Ham for every cent he had, and then picked up Lenegrast's key and a few other goodies from the hag's bag. I did forget that she won't sell infinite life gems until she goes back to Majula. Yeah, it's a randomizer setting where she'll still sell them, but let's hope we can find the last giant soon so we can send her on her way to set up shop. I very skillfully opened up the wall shortcut from the inside with the help of some trusty fire bombs, and it wasn't even close. Then it was time to bust down a door Johnny style and pick up some more items lying around. Items are my best friend in a randomizer. I took the ladder down, the fog gate out, and got warped to the path to Hyde's Tower of Flame. Dear Flame. Lucky for me, the fog gate randomizer also adds new fog gates, so before I was able to get too excited, I got warped once again, this time to the Iron Passage. Oh boy. There are a lot of areas in Dark Souls 2 that were a rough go in my initial playthrough, and I can only assume it will be 18 times worse in a randomizer. Thankfully, I don't have to find out now, and I was spit back out in Broom Tower, but since the scepter wasn't inserted, and since I hadn't docked in the wharf, it was my first dead end. Back in Majula, I popped a bunch of souls that I had collected, bought some money that was on sale from Shalquar, the Ring of Steel protection from Moulin, and then back to Miss Herald for as much health and adaptability as I could get. I need my sweet, sweet iframes, baby. I took the path from Majula to where Benhart likes to chill and got bonus fog gated once again, this time to the Cave of the Dead. Oh boy. Another fun fact about this randomizer is that the enemy randomizer scales the enemies and bosses to their new locations, but the fog randomizer does not affect the scaling in any way. So if I go to a late game area, it's late game scaling, even if we go there early. I went back to the things betwixt to check out the fog gates I had previously passed up, and one led me to retrieve the smelter wedge of the old Iron King. And the other brought me to the old crow's nest where I could trade some smooth and silky items with Dinah and Tillo. Tillo? Tillo. I don't know. I completely forgot that I had the ability to send Lenegrast back to the office instead of letting him work remotely, so I let him set up shop and then checked out his wares. I once again got fog-gated on my way to Hyde's from Majula, and oh boy, it's the Black Gulch. What a super fun area that I love so much, especially with the new enemies here like a lightning horse and super fun red phantom popsicle man. That sounds like a problem for future Nathan. I went back to the Forest of Tripping Titans to pick up a few more goodies, including the Ring of Backshot Protection and the Soul of Sin. Then I got poison misted by a chest and realized that even the chest traps were randomized, which is actually pretty cool if you ask me. I found myself the covetous gold serpent ring and got really excited because I thought it was the covetous silver serpent ring. And then I took the fog gate from the Cardinal Tower to that little courtyard thing with the sleeping enemies, whatever, you know what I mean, I don't know what to call it. And it brought me to Earthen Peak, where good old Ornstein replaced the Covetous Demon. And even better, the hollows in the pots, they are also randomized and instantly aggroed. Lucky for me, the fog gate randomizer breaks boss AI if you come in from an entrance that isn't the main one, so the Dragon Slayer is deep asleep while I try to deal with the assholes chasing me around the arena. If only I had more healing than just One Estes. You know it's rough when the Cave of the Dead sounds better than the Covetous Demon, but here I am. I popped a human effigy, which are in rare supply these days, and got my health bar back to full and just barely made it through the cave, only to get spit out at maybe the only place worse, the Shrine of Amana. This randomizer really has a sick sense of humor, because a randomizer could have blessed me, given me passive enemies or weak enemies, but no, I was brutally bombarded with hooves and whatever that thing was. What did I do to deserve this? The Black Gulch seemed a bit more doable than the Shrine, but not by much. Everywhere I've been so far is a death trap. I think this is what vanilla players went through when they played Scholar for the first time. I understand it now. I was able to make it to the bonfire and exit through the entrance. Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of confusion like that. And I ended up in the gutter. How fun. I parkoured my way down, made it to the bonfire, and made the single greatest discovery of the entire run. Soul Farm reindeer in the gutter, baby. I am not above using cheap tricks to come out on top. Call me Dick Dastardly from Wacky Races, but my plans aren't being foiled by the sheer plot armor of unaware Hanna-Barbera cartoons. It wasn't all unicorns and rainbows though. On occasion Blitzen would path me without dying, and I had to be more aware than I thought. I joined the company of champions so that my cash cow would keep spawning, and you bet your sweet ass I absolutely milked it dry. Souls right from the teat. Nearly 5,000 souls every time I hit that little rest button. After gathering just a small amount of souls, I went back to the Forest of Fallen Giants to buy a rock and a twig, the third dragon ring and blue moon greatsword from Mulan, and then straight to the Green Goddess to level up. I popped an effigy, and with my health bar a little bit longer than it was before, I put on the Emperor's new clothes and tried my luck going down the well. Some may call this a waste of life gems, and I would have to agree with you there, but after a few close calls, I took the fog gate to the Forest of Fallen Giants post-pursuer area. Curious if warps were randomized, I curled up like a ball, and to my joy, dismay, who knows really, but I was warped to the Lost Bastille. I got the Ember for Macduff, said hello to this lady? Sorry, I forgot her name. And then I made my way through the area, cursing the randomizer for somehow putting the worst possible enemy in every location. Astounding. This makes the Dark Souls 1 randomizer feel like a walk in the park. I killed the normal enemy who replaced the pursuer, got another balmy branch, and decided it would be a smart idea to keep the old dark sign in my hotbar for quick use cases such as this. These poison enemies sure are annoying, especially when I have one Estus and no life gems to my name. I'm not sure if I complained about it enough yet, but healing was a hurdle that would soon need to be overcome before I started ripping out my hair one at a time until I looked like Northern Lion. I really did my darndest to send the explosive barrel down the stairs to open Macduff's shop, but this hippo was hungry for gunpowder, and gunpowder only. If I can't get smithing, I better get sniffing. Well, this guy's gonna get sniffing. And I made my way to the interior, dodging another hippo man and lump of flesh on my way to the fog gate for the ruined sentinels, which led me back to the forest. Yay? Maybe? I went out towards the pursuer and took the closest fog gate to find myself in Huntsman's Copse, a lovely thicket of greenery, local fauna, and also death. Death in the form of a hedgehog from Eliam Lois. Not just any hedgehog from Eliam Lois, a red phantom one. But don't worry, there's no need to freak out about it or anything. You know what you can freak out about though? This video's sponsor, Whatnot. Whatnot is an online marketplace where you can buy, sell, or auction your favorite items live. From retro video games, consoles, trading cards, and more, there's something for everyone up for grabs. I'm looking for an old new copy of Kingsfield for the PlayStation 2, so let's see if we can find one. We're gonna get Kingsfield on the PlayStation 2. From Software's first game series. Not the first one in the series, but the first game series. And it's all mine. Maybe we're due for a Kingsfield Let's Play. And just like that, I'm the owner of a brand new old retro game. Can you believe this bad boy's 25 years old? Anyway, now all I need is a PlayStation 2. You can use my link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen to get $15 off your first purchase anywhere on the app. A retro console for $50 is a pretty darn good deal, but you can't have this one. Maybe you can find yourself a copy of Kingsfield or a retro game you've been hunting. Thank you again for Whatnot for sponsoring this video. Still one Estus, by the way. I would do unspeakable things for just one more sip of my Sunny D. That and a Klondike bar. I tried to take out the enemies and make my way through carefully, but there's no way I'm getting through this unless I run for dear life and just pray that the hitboxes are on my side. Thankfully for me, the Ninja Turtles upped their pizza intake and were a bit slower on the chase, so I was able to get the bonfire to figure out my next move. Across the bridge and through the woods, my goal is to pick up every shiny I can find. Each one could be something important that could change the trajectory of this run. I simply ignore enemies as I pull the lever to lower the bridge and make it safely across to the other side. My health bar is once again at 50%, and effigies as well as life gems are in short supply, which makes traversal one hell of a mission. Red Phantom Big Dick Rick was guarding the bridge, and all I could do at this point was just keep running and hope we can make it to a fog gate that leads somewhere less upsetting. Maybe the Undead Purgatory would be a bit more inviting? I cross the bridge, keeping in mind that it's hanging on by a thread. Honestly, if they don't use my hard-earned tax dollars to maintain infrastructure in Drang Lake, what on earth are they using it for? So close to seeing the last giant, yet so far from getting infinite life gems from the hag. I also spent about 4 minutes killing this guy from Broom Tower while he tried to get me with his molten discharge. I also kinda love this poison axe. Up the elevator, I immediately opened the shortcut back to Cardinal Tower and picked up the heckin' smelter sword, baby. I think we just solved our damage problem for, checks notes, ever. I can't celebrate too long though, because my next fog gate is Ava. Or Lud. Or Zalin. Who cares? Big cat in Mytha Arena, and she forgot to flush the toilet. There's no way I'm going to last long waiting around through her toxic piss. I went back to Lenegrast and allowed him to upgrade my brand spankin' new sword, and then did my best Hornet cosplay. Shaw! It was back to the gutter, and this time I was attempting to progress, not just trying to scam the game out of a quick buck, but now I was the one getting scammed. I hadn't found any torches yet, and let's just say the gutter is pretty dark. Not only that, but I forgot how good the tracking is on spells. Obviously not the spells that I cast. That would be preposterous. Only the spells cast against me. I gave the gutter a break and went back to the Hunter's Acre Wood, snagged the look-away key, ignored the rumbling from Tigger inside the Skeleton Lord's arena, and came face to face with my first boss. Well, the first boss I'm gonna fight. Ava, the Rotten. However, my sliver of health did not last long, and the homicidal psycho jungle cat takes me down faster than you can say, "For the love of all that is holy, please game, just give me a few more life gems or maybe another flask." It was at this point that I realized I was still in the company of champions from my little farming session, so I went back to say bonsoir to Shalquar and was stripped of my rank. Back to the cops, I was no longer dealing 20% less damage or taking 50% more damage, and I used my fancy new key to unlock a closer bonfire, got the soul sucked out of me by a giant, and then met Creighton for the first time ever. I love finding things that I missed on my first playthrough. It was time to take on Ava once again, and I can only assume this cat fight will be a bit of a roadblock. My damage was good, but I can't believe it's already been a year since I've played Dark Souls 2, and honestly, I forget a lot of the moves. And my biggest complaint of the game still stands. Why on earth are there copious amounts of bloodstains and messages in the boss room? They are distracting and infuriating, and honestly, good question. I have no idea why I'm playing online in a randomizer. Ava can close the distance much faster than the Rotten, and my single flask is not doing much in terms of helping out. I much prefer life gems in fights. Flasks for levels, rocks for bosses. It's a much better system. Some of the moves just came out faster than my 26-year-old reaction time could muster up a dodge roll, and I was also doing my best not to get tossed into the flaming puddles of pollutant dumped here by Big Oil. Luck was on my side, however, and Ava also took damage from the fire. That's big. But I'm still a generational thrower, choker, fumbler, however you want to say it. Rest assured, I'm going to die 20 times, not learn anything, and blame whatever I can besides my own incompetent gameplay. All it really took was getting brutalized by the most ridiculous hitbox I have ever seen to finally get me to lock in. This was the attempt. I popped a human effigy, got flashed by Rick at the bonfire, and ran right back to the cat in all my pasty human form glory. Despite my absolutely hilarious commentary, I was learning the fight again. It's just way more fun to do this in Canada versus the Rotten's mom's filthy basement. The smelter sword does insane damage. I was dodging into the cat, and with a full health bar, I was finally able to give this cat one last pss, 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 before I sent her to the big ball of yarn in the sky. Ava la vista, kitty. The fog behind Ava led me to the Iron Keep overlooking the Smelter Demon's arena, and my foe down there, the Burnt Ivory King. What's with all the chilly bosses in the toasty areas? I thought Snowbird season was over. Before dropping in though, I took another fog gate that led me to the Old Chaos. I think I'm gonna have to pass on this one. I am willing to let the chaos keep being chaotic without my intervention. You're welcome. I dropped down to the old king who wandered out of his interdimensional nursing home, but he was not too keen on going back, and I just decided out of the kindness of my heart to let him have a few more moments of freedom before I had to take him by force. Back in the things betwixt, I totally had this guy smell my stick, and unfortunately for me, I was brought to the Shrine of Amana once again. I picked up some loot and disposed of the enemies on the outskirts, but was unable to make it far in terms of actual progression. Dear Alluring Skulls, I think I hate you. I made it through to the other side by sheer luck alone and was brought to the elevator after Mytha. I can still hear that damn cat in there. Once again, however, I am punished for not having docked yet. I remembered that I hadn't fallen for Pate's trap that he warns me about right before it closes, so I went back to the forest. I know there aren't any fogs or key items, but regular items are always useful, and this early in the game, nothing is a match for my smelter sword. This thing absolutely rips. I cleared out the enemies, opened the secret door, and found a whole lot of nothing. Thank you, Pathu. That's what Pate is short for. I did some more exploring and finally found an Estus shard. In a world where no one sells life gems, 2 sips of juice is an absolute game changer. I finally had more than one consistent heal, and it felt like the developers looked upon me with favor, because now I get to plant my feet firmly on the ground and heal in slow motion a second time. It was finally time to go back through the fog gate that led to the covetous dragon slayer. The old dragon demon. Either way, the ads were dragging their nuts across my face, and I was not having a good time. I love randomizers, because it can always be anything, but more times than not, it's the literal worst thing that the game can throw at you. Well, I suppose it could always be worse. It could be 3 frozen reindeers and Servalon. I once again tried Alluring Skulls with no success. I mean, really, what are these even for? I'm being trolled. Skull emoji times 10. Still, I will count my lucky stars that the boss doesn't aggro until I get near the entrance, and I found out that the enemies in the pots, for whatever reason, just don't respawn. So I took them out slowly but surely, and then Dark signed out so I could come back with full Estus. This old dragon slayer is nothing without his particularly plump pal, but fortunately for me, my weapon is slow, my greed knows no bounds, and this is one of the extremely rare times that I get punished for it. Extremely rare. Usually greedy, rarely punished. That's what I always say. And how am I supposed to not get distracted by his goofy-ass run? Do you see how he runs? Posture problems aside, on my 3rd attempt, I was locked in, dodging, swinging, doing insane damage with my boss weapon that I had found on the ground. It was all coming together. I think they should have kept his lightning, though. I'm not a big fan of the dark magic. I get it, it's not Ornstein, but also, come on, it's Ornstein. One thing I don't get is how sometimes I just do piss poor damage for no reason. What is this? Is this the bite of 87? If anything, it should have been counter damage, but whatever, game. I ignored the messages on the ground and the phantoms doing donuts around me in the room, and the old covetous demon slayer wasn't able to slay me. Because I'm not a dragon. Or a demon. Or that covetous. I'm only greedy sometimes. The next fog gate led me to frozen Elium Lois, past Ava, and I was able to chat with Alsana, who heard of my triumph against Ava in the Black Gulch and kindly agreed to defrost the surrounding area. I was gonna say dethaw, but technically dethawing something is freezing it. I took the fog gate to enter the old chaos. Chaos. I'm here to fight chaos. Final Fantasy, what did they do to you? But No Man's Wharf greeted me with, you guessed it, Ice Horse. I called the boat in, dropped the shortcut, and chatted with this guy who once again calls me stupid and refuses to teach me anything cool. Whatever, bro. I boarded the ship, and the Flexile fog gate led me to the Grave of Saints. I wasted one of my lockstones, but was not too keen on wasting the other, so instead I made my way through the area, carefully took out a broom brute, and waited 3 business days for the world's longest elevator to pick me up and then take me down to the Guardian Dragon's arena in Aldia's Keep, which to my pleasant surprise led me to the Undead Crypt, where I was face to helmet with Pursuer Vendrick. I will be taking the King's Ring, and I'm sure I will be back at some point. I went back to the old forest of collapsing colossuses, and that bit is done now. But I took out the King's Ring for a spin, hoping it would lead me somewhere that I hadn't been. Spoiler alert, I once again did not keep track of where any of the fog gates went. Am I an idiot? Yes. Is it more fun this way? Actually, no, not really. Plus it adds a few hours of where the frickin' heck can I go time that I would really like to get back. With the ship fully docked, I spent about 30 minutes getting through the Shrine of Amana once again. I really wish I was exaggerating. Might have been more like 45 minutes, but we'll call it 30. I hit Mytha's arena from the back, and well, It was time to hit Mytha from the front, in the Flexile Sentry Arena. Honestly, pretty fitting. This fight was nothing too crazy. Big damage from my sword, face tanking a few hits, actually seeing some of her moves for once. That was pretty cool. She had some quick attacks, cool combos, and threw her head at me a few times. My greed, however, could not be stopped. I finished the fight with a backshot, and I came out on top. Just barely. The next fog gate led me to a dead end back in the things betwixt, and it was time to go back to the drawing board and look for some good old progression. While I thought about what avenues that had yet to be discovered, it seemed like a fitting time to go back to the gutter and farm the heck out of that reindeer. This is the most cathartic farming I have ever done in any Souls game. Funny story though, look at my health bar. That's right, I am all the way hollowed. I went full hollowed. My best guess is something broke with the randomizer or something kept dying when I was farming because my sin level plummeted. I went all the way to wretch status. Good thing I had one more human effigy on me because that would have been bad. I mean, it can still be bad unless I find Cromwell or some more human effigies. I traded with the crows and decided that I was gonna make the leap from the nest to that nice little bridge with an unexplored fog gate on the other side. I have no idea if this was the only option to me, but I was desperate for some progression. I used a plunge attack to make sure I didn't roll off the edge and stuck the landing, only to find myself in the Iron Keep. How lovely. I cranked some levers, turned a wheel, and took the oven off of self-clean mode. I ran past the big enemies, took out the smaller ones, and talked to Magarold, who surely had a nice assortment of items for sale. A couple weapons, some rings, and what's that? Infinite human effigies, baby. We are so back. I cleaned out a shop and went on my way, only to get foiled by misjudging the distance on a gap. More coyote frames, please. With all of my options seemingly exhausted, it was time to explore the gutter. Raw, no torch. I was doing well too until a red phantom bellkeeper came up and kicked my shins a few times, sending me on my way down to see what was at the bottom of the gutter. My dead body. That's what. A couple more deaths and some lucky item pickups, I was able to find a torch and start lighting the place up like Nicolas Cage in National Treasure 2. I also, once again, forgot that I was in the company of champions. Thank you, Shalquar. Turns out that wasn't the real problem though, and I'm just bad. Oh brother, another horse. Of course, a horse. Sometimes a death is a sign, and that death was a sign to get my ass over to Macduff and get his dear flame burning before I ran out of torch time. The ogre, however, still didn't want me tossing that barrel down the stairs. I tried using a throwing knife to pull his aggro. I tried smacking him between the cheeks. I tried an alluring skull, and that one he took personally. I tried using a silver talisman to disguise myself, and that is when I successfully got the barrel down the stairs, but didn't make it all the way. I was able to coax it in place and use my flaming sword to give that barrel a clean smack, igniting the powder within and blowing a hole in the wall. I looted everything from the chests, gave Macduff his ember, and unfortunately this shop didn't have much to offer, but I was kind enough to light his torch anyway, and claim 5 Lois souls from the iron chest he used as a chamber pot. Back in the gutter, I continued to light the place up while running for my life, each run through getting a bit easier with the ability to see my path. I made it to the bonfire with the help of my dragon charms and then entered the fog gate to Belfry Luna. I straight up rang that bell. Still have no idea what it does, and then I joined the Bell Covenant, trying to get a good drop or two. I pressed on and was met with a very peculiar fog gate, just a wall, but there's an added fog gate, so strange. But I was brought to the area just before the pursuer. And that pursuer fog gate led me to, well, somewhere. I know where I am, but I have no idea what it's called. I trudged through the water, took an elevator, picked up some more garbage, and found myself a little boner dust under the stairs. Sublime. And then I was thrust into the doors of Pharos, and it didn't take long for me to jog to another fog that brought me into Brightstone Cove, Seldora. The T is silent, by the way. I played a little baseball with a rat, and Nomeo was impressed with my homer. Signed me to the Jays, and maybe they have a shot this year. Clearly I was having too much fun, and the Darksucker gave it to me. Yeah, this enemy is actually called the Darksucker. Very upsetting. I let the hot fire lady blow herself up and carefully carved a path through to the spider cave. And how lucky for me, I found myself another boss. Lud and Zalin, except it wasn't 2 cats. It was a blue flaming bull demon and a guy jacked up on roids with a bell on a stick. What a duo boss. My damage was honestly fantastic, but leave it to me to forget yet another boss's moveset. I had a couple life gems in my pocket, but to my surprise, the blue smelter demon was quick with the chase. Sure, he thrives in a smaller arena, but either way, he smelted my health bar while I was trying to get away for a heal. Don't mind me, nothing Nothing to see here. There's nothing going on. As punishment for my greedy soul farming, when I got back to the cove, I was rudely invaded. Yes, I got invaded during my randomizer. By a real person. Please tell me why I'm playing this online. What idiot launched the game in online? I'm gonna get banned. After getting my salad tossed by everyone's grandma's favorite breakfast cereal, I was all out of hope. I had a sliver of health and no heals. I was ready to admit defeat when I went for the Hail Mary play. And I hit the great sword parry. The timing was impeccable. I put the invader down on the ground before taking away their entire health bar with one critical hit. Mom, I just hit a clip. Feldstat Smelter Wombo combo sounded like a job for future Nathan. Future Burd? Do I have to call myself Burd? That feels a bit cringe. I went back to the Iron Keep to explore some fog gates I had previously passed over, and I was curious what would happen if I broke all these little furnaces, and to my surprise, absolutely nothing. I pulled the lever to lower the ogre to the surface of Mustafar, and then I was a bit greedy for loot and got sent there myself. I took a ladder up from the rafters and continued to seek high ground until I arrived at the not-so-secret treasure room. Or treasure balcony, I guess. Not much in terms of notable loot, but I carefully parkoured my way down through the great steel factory of Hamilton, Ontario, and made my way to a nice, peaceful fog gate. Psych, idiot, it's the Belfry Gargoyles. Or as I like to call it, Boss Rush mode. The enemy randomizer also calls it Boss Rush mode, but I wanted to sound cool. And of course we get another blue smelter demon. Basically, instead of having to fight 6 monstrosities on the roof all at the same time, I am going to get 6 individual bosses in a row, and I have to beat all of them in order to beat the gargoyles. Sounds fun, right? The blue smelter demon goes down relatively easily. It does less damage and has less health than the one back in Canada, and the slope of the roof is very helpful in letting some of the sword swings go over my head. Gotta love it when the terrain works in your favor for once. I let the big guy hit me towards the end before I put him down. The fight was practically hitless before that, and he was looking kinda blue. Next up was Najka, who had even less health than the smelter, but my overconfidence made me greedy and I got comboed within an inch of my life. The hot bug lady tried to distract me with her ample bosom, but my resolve would not be shaken that easily, ma'am. The Dark Lurker was up next and was not coming down. He said no puppy guarding during grounders, so I backed off, and then the fight was underway. I suffered a few blows and took a risky heal with a dragon charm, but lucky for me, the Dark Lurker's clone bugged and watched from the special chair while I gave it to the original. Nishandra came out to sesh on the roof, but was not chill. If she wasn't easy enough at the end of the game, I don't know what to tell ya. Bye, Nishandra. And last but not least, we have Veldstat, the Giga Chad himself, Mr. Ring That Bell. I brought him to his knees, and I love a big guy with a big weapon in a suit of armor, but not as much as I love winning a boss fight. And the Belfry Gargs go down. I guess there were only 5. I was immediately thrust into another fight. This time, the old Iron King had replaced the Lost Sinner. Sounds scary, but this guy has no idea what to do if you just stay in his plumber's crack. Seriously, you just circle around, bait a move, and go to town on that ass. This boss is only somewhat concerning in his own arena, but even then, all bark, no bite. Can I also just say, shout out to the dev who took the time to make the old Iron King absolutely caked up beyond belief. I mean, are you seeing this? So much detail in a body we were never supposed to see. I commend you for that. Bro does not skip leg day. Old Firecrotch goes down, and I wish I could say I got to light my first primal bonfire, but random fog gate. Oh boy, Aldia's keep time. I hit another great sword parry. Less impressive because it was on an NPC invader, but it still might be just the most satisfying thing in the entire game. I opened the door to the foyer, gave the dragon a good yank, and opened the secret door to the bonfire. I was very curious if the randomizer would make it so the enemies couldn't bust down the doors in the keep, but lucky for me, they still busted for me. The fog gate to the guardian dragon led me back to the Shrine of Amana. Yay. It was a much more peaceful area, and I opened the special door and took an elevator down to another fog gate. Why don't you just take a sip every time I say fog gate? That sounds like a very fun and responsible game. Once again in the doors of Pharos, and only one lockstone to my name, I dispatched of a red phantom, climbed up a ladder, hit a button, and got farted on, but it's okay, because I was awarded with 5 petrified dragon bones. I ran across a precarious ledge to find myself another hazy door. Yeah, that's right, I'm diversifying my vocabulary. And I ended up in the undead purgatory in the arena of the Executioner's Chariot. I came in at the wrong side of the arena, which means the boss is not active, and I'm able to clear out all the randomized ads running around the racetrack. I'm collecting your debts on behalf of Don Lino. It's a fish-eat-fish world. I think those 40 life gems will do just nicely in my pocket. Thank you. I cleaned out the arena and activated the boss, and oddly enough, it was still the chariot? The horse ran circles around the track like the world's most interesting NASCAR race. Yeah. Woo, baby! Keep driving a circle. Woo! Yay. But once I pulled the lever and the horse crashed into the portcullis, the lost sinner burst forward and it was time to dance. My damage was excellent against the lost chariot, the executioner's sinner. I like that the other mods combine the names. It just adds a certain je ne sais quoi. Without the arena shrouded in darkness, the sinner had nowhere to hide, and I had nothing to be afraid of with all this crack in my pocket. I was using my gems left and right, and honestly, it just felt great to have a solid amount of healing in my inventory. No one tell me to conserve them. I've gone so long running on fumes, just let me live a little. But you know who wasn't gonna live a little? The lost sinner. Yeah, she's gonna die a lot. Or like once, because that's pretty much the maximum. Right after the lost sinner, it was time to fight Ava. Again, what's with the lack of variety here? I should change the name of this video to Dark Souls 2, but every boss is a big blue guy or giant cat. The Guardian Dragon's arena was nice and big, and I learned much from our previous encounter. Run from the AoE, dodge into the melee attacks, strafe the magic. I was unstoppable. 430 damage per R1? Yes, please. I was playing patient, I suppose, and I was trying to bait out the melee swipes as often as I could. I'm not sure how manipulatable boss AI is in Dark Souls 2, but let me have the placebo. Ava goes down again, this time on the first try, and I can't believe this randomizer is so full of puss. The next boss, however, was a brutal reminder of my own mortality, and I was stuck in a room with my worst nightmare. A Sanctum Knight, a Heartless, and Sir Alon. And lucky for me, the Congregation is also counted as a boss, so I can't clear out the ads first. Surely this is going to be a good time. Luckily the guy scared of the light doesn't attack, but he sure gets in the way, and that is just as bad when I'm dealing with one of the harder bosses in the game. My damage to the Shulva swordsman was good, but my windows for attacking were not very frequent. I was caught running around like a fool and sent packing all the way back to Aldia's Keep. Now that is a run back. I tried my darndest to take out the only other attacker in the room, but shortly after they were disposed of, I was slowly getting worn down by Sir Alon and his long dong, as well as the other moron in the arena who wouldn't stop getting in my way and making that horrendous noise. On my third attempt, I got the backstab of my life and took out my other opponent instantly, but I wouldn't be me without choking my first good try at a boss. And after I cleaned out the rest of the congregation, I got grabbed and was not long for this world. Try number 5, Prowling Alon would not come out alive. I successfully took out the people in the pews and then locked in for the real fight. Sir Alon might be my favorite boss in the game. The jury's still out until I have a few more runs, but I like the faster paced fights. And he has enough moves up his arsenal that it doesn't feel insanely repetitive like some of the other bosses. After a bit of a choke job in the beginning, I got Sir Magus stuck in one of the remaining benches in the sanctuary, but my life gem made him input read and break free. The damage from my superb sword was stellar, but the speed was subpar. The end lag of whiffing attacks left me wide open for swift retaliation from the katana-wielding lunatic. But let's be real, a boss like him, with early scaling, 540 on a counter damage R1? Yeah, I'd win. Victory was swiftly achieved. Along with my thoughts, I composed myself and then went through the next fog gate. Back to the Lost Bastille, I found the servants' quarters bonfire, got the Bastille key, gave an honorable send-off to a mimic, but it got offended and then I got railed from an alternate dimension. I poked my head up to where Strayed was hanging out, but decided he might just be better off being petrified, for both our sake, and I jumped down and ran towards Sinner's Rise. I got absolutely things betwixted and then found myself in the arena of Sin. The Flexile Sin was low on the list for bosses I was expecting, and honestly, after seeing my own damage and the bosses, I was a wee bit concerned. Sometimes the scariest thing in randomizers are early game bosses with late game scaling. You get a false sense of security and then boom, half your health is gone. I played very cautiously, baiting out heavy slams from the boss. Big city slams, boys. And then I was able to retaliate with some of my own. This boss isn't so bad when it can't capitalize on the close quarters of its own arena. Once again, say it with me, always greedy, never punished. I still had life gems to spare, and the Flexile slumbering sentry takes a forever nap. Oh, she's kicking her feet, look! She's kicking her feet! Bare feet, feetless! I jumped across the rooftops and got the soul of the Dragon Rider! And then dropped down to get a few more goodies. Among them, an Estus Flask Shard. Estus Flask Shard. Say that 5 times fast. We take those, baby. I ran as fast as I could through the courtyard and opened the shortcut back to McDuff. and it only cost me my life, so worth it. I went to the backside of the Bastille and took the fog gate to the Dragon's Rest, which led me to a chasm of old, which led me to the creepy man in the basement of Drenglake Castle, aka another dead end. I went back to the Bastille, got Sen's fortress up through the interior, and found Shanalot's Swiffer Duster in a chest. That is infinite home bones, baby. Back in the Forest of Fallen Giants, I was searching for places to go and found the Black Knight Great Axe on my way to Kale to get the spooky house key. I also remembered that I had more to explore in the Iron Keep, and that piqued my interest over clearing out a basement with no fog gate. I skillfully made my way around the traps, got the bonfire, and then disabled everything that was trying to kill me. The old Iron King gate thrust me into Belfry Soul, and then this guy thrust his sword into me, and I Belfry Souled. I went back and rang the bell, and then ran for my life, taking the first fog gate I saw to good old Hyde's Tower of Flame. Dear Flame. After taking out some big lads, I learned that the Dragon Rider Arena has more than one ring that you can raise from the water. The more you know. I got the bonfire and then attempted the most ambitious jump of my Dark Souls 2 career. I then wandered into some fog that led me back to Majula, where Benhart was chillin'. You give me the willies too, bro. And I was quickly warped to the bottom of the well in Majula. At least I think that's where it was. I don't know, man. This is my second playthrough, and my first one wasn't that good to begin with. More heckin' reindeer. I don't know, man. It's fun to call them reindeer and horses. I can't pick. I did my skillful From Software patented parkour and definitely did not fall off the platform and get insanely lucky. And then I got insanely unlucky when I was dropped back into a dark chasm. I was really struggling with the red phantom enemies smashing me left and right, and then I got finished off by a mage who shot magic right into my dark chasm. That was certainly one option, but for now, let's see what's behind door number 2. I killed off an ogre posing as a dragon, dropped the bridge down, and then wound up in the Iron Passage. Oh boy, this is surely gonna go very poorly. That is, unless I just run on autopilot and somehow manage to make it through on the first attempt. The Iron Passage led me to Drenglake Castle, and I climbed the world's longest ladder and then put on the King's Ring in hopes that some of the enemies wouldn't be aggro. So much for that. I made a classic blunder by not killing enemies by the Giant's Punch Bowl, so I lured someone else all the way back so we could get the party started. The Giant straight up cranked it and activated the elevator, and for some unknown reason, I thought the door I opened earlier was a roll-off elevator secret, and then realized halfway through my roll that it wasn't, and decided to try and bail. At the top, I found the key to the King's Passage, but had to leave the girl in the cage. Sorry, lady. No Keyblade today. I opened up the King's Passage and ran for my life to the Looking Glass Knight's Cog, getting another Estus shard along the way. And it was time for Elium Lois. How fun. At least it's thawed already. I ran right to the Eye of the Priestess, but other than that, this area was just another dead end. I then tried for the better part of an hour to make an impossible jump. I wanted to get around the fog gate before the twin dragon riders, so my plan was to jump up on the rail, get some speed, and then jump off. Everyone told me it was impossible. Everyone told me I couldn't do it. After many attempts, I finally hit the perfect angle, and there is a kill box blocking the jump. But to the doubters, it was totally doable. Defeated, I tucked my tail between my legs and went back to the doors of Pharos, this time leaving through the fog gate by the fountain in order to reach the little clearing in the Forest of Fallen Giants. It was time for some brain off R1 spam. Easy early game area, late game weapon. Nothing was a match to RAR XD. I also got the Flynn's ring, as well as the Chloranthy ring for my troubles. I went back the Majula way from the forest, and to my surprise, I was in the Cathedral of Blue, face to ass with Sir Old Dragon Slayer. Old Alon Slayer? Let's go with that one. I equipped some healing items and went to the entrance to activate the fight. I had already fought you once, sir, but here you are, back for more. My damage to this Alon was more than the last one, and all I saw in my head was big number and health bar go down. I am such a moron. I just turned off my brain. Sure, he was only hitting for chip damage, but that adds up. But you know what else adds up? The grab attack that buffs him. Now he was doing even more chip damage. But you know what's even worse than that? 2 grabs in a row! I didn't even know he could do that. I almost lost to the Hyde's boss when I'm at least level 100. Absolutely embarrassing. But I snapped out of the yips before it was too late. Locked in, taking heals when I could and not being greedy, and then got caught in a 3rd grab. All those hits and Alon couldn't kill me. He was buffed, but I got the last laugh, and he was so embarrassed that he killed himself. After the old dragon Alon, I finally made it to the Shaded Woods. The first part of it anyway. I used a fragrant branch on Rosabeth and then gave her some clothes, but oh no, I don't have any shoes to give her. Oh well. As a token of thanks, she sells infinite petrified dragon bones. That's what I'm talking about. And I slashed my way to the ruined Fork Road bonfire, and for the first time in a long time, I had some options to work with. I decided to first check the King's Gate leading to Aldia's Keep, and they replaced the bouncer with a basilisk. The fog gate at the front of the haunted mansion led me to Broom Tower, but with no iron scepter still, I had only one route from here. I smacked the old self-sucking bowls down the lane to light my foes on fire and ran for my life, pulling every lever I could get my hands on. They graciously let me through, and I ran across the big chains to the Forge of Giants. This led me to the Dragon Sanctum, and to my dismay, the new and improved Izalith Dragon Butts were filled with so much disdain, they transcended the randomizer settings. Leave it to me to still die to gravity, though. I took the elevators to Shulva proper and said how do you do to Sin before running through the area crying as I'm faced with yet another frosty foal. This death trap of an area was not to be trifled with, but here I was, trifling with it. She must be from Dirty Dogs. Much like my first time in Shulva, I pretty much just ran around smacking as many of the weird mechanisms that I could, and I was being very smart and resourceful before a lion man came over and made sure I was swiftly punished. Did you guys know there's a gap there? Classic. I got frickin' undead-burged by Sin, and he cleared the bridge for me to enter the Dragon Sanctum. It's oddly more eerie in here with no ladies singing for my arrival, although I was greeted by a hungry hippo. I pressed on further into the sanctum and attempted to use throwing knives to hit the buttons that were out of my reach. I could have done it with binoculars, I'm sure. Or the great bow that I had in my back pocket. Sure glad I wasted most of my consumables before realizing I had it. My greed knows no bounds as it got me killed again, distracted by yet another piece of loot. Don't worry, there was nothing of value in those chests anyway. I disabled the floor spikes and retrieved my dragon stone, then I found a fog gate that led me to the Rat King himself. I offered a few tales I've picked up along the way. Really dumb how you have to do it one at a time in Dark Souls 2. And it wasn't even worth it. I did some parkour down the conveniently placed coffins, but alas, another dead end. Back in the Shaded Woods, thanks to my expert horse farming, my soul memory was indeed high enough to open the Shrine of Winter. I braved my way through the tanky enemies to come face to face with a foggate.png and also talk to my wife. I fell asleep and awoke in the memory of Jag, and Mitha was once again looking mighty fine. Unfortunately, entering the fog arena from this side meant I had to swiftly sprint across the ramparts as a raging hail of hellfire was being launched from the sea. And there was also a fire salamander. And an ogre. I took a pit stop back at Majula, got another flask, and Rosabeth thanked me for clothing her. It was the least I could do. Literally. I joined the company of champions and it was time for another round of reindeer rodeo. Yeehaw, that's a lot of souls. I got my strength up so I could wield the Black Knight Great Axe, and tell me why this went from a big, juicy Great Axe in the original Dark Souls to the GLP-1 version in Dark Souls 2. Where's the girth? The last unexplored fog gate from the ruined Fork Road led me to the Iron Keep just after the old Iron King. I lit the primal bonfire but was unable to progress further. I went back to Shulva to insert my Dragon Stone and then back up across the bridge to enter the Sanctum from the top. I very carefully parkoured my way down, jumping with ease and falling with grace. The fog gate to Ilana's arena brought me back to the Bastille, to where I've already been. Guess I had to give Mitha the old university attempt. I tried to wait for as long as I could before crossing the war zone to see if the explosive cannon fire would take out my enemies, but it was no use. I was just gonna have to run and hope, and also pray. I made it to the fog in one piece, but the bozos that I kited along were hot on my tail and didn't make it easy to run back to Mitha. My next run, I barely made it back to the Headless Snake Mommy, and I got some solid hits in and used the architecture to my advantage. The end of her tail was invisible, which made it hard to tell when she was attacking with it, and her quick combos were hitting me for big damage. I got low and ran out of my usual heals, so I called a timeout and snacked on a dried root. It's a healing item that takes its sweet time, and I really had to pee, so I assumed she couldn't reach me and, like a dumbass, went AFK. But the next time, I ran through that memory and it was time to give Mitha the business. Yeah, just kidding. Invisible Tail got me again. I wasn't a fan of the Great Axe's moveset, so I had to go back to my trusty Smelter Greatsword. With the power of a Raging Inferno in my hand, it was time to put Big Mitha down. Again. What is this, the third time? Oh no, whatever will I do? I have to fight another hot lady. Oh no! I was finding good openings and chances to strafe. The only move that still really got me was the double spin. I kept rolling into it when I should have just been spamming R1. I was still able to use the terrain to my advantage in order to pop some free heals and attempt plunges, but this time when she caught on and learned how to go upstairs, I wasn't AFK. And Mythalord becomes just a distant memory. The fog gate at the other end gives me a brief stop in the undead crypt before I eventually come to the frigid outskirts. This area has no fog, just death, destruction, and a dead end. So, I think I'm good. Thank you. It was time to go back to the Iron Keep and say hello once again to the Burnt Ivory King. Or I guess the Burnt Smelter King? Whatever you want to call yourself, buddy, but I have your number, and in about 60 seconds, I'll call your time of death. My power has at least quadrupled since the last time I was here, if not in damage, in skill alone. My ADP is sufficiently leveled, and in the grand scheme of the whole game, and where this guy normally is, this is a fairly early scaled arena. He got me in a lucky grab, but the chip damage from the Burnt Ivory Demon wasn't enough to take down this Curse Bearer. And I beat him so badly he went crying all the way back to the old Chaos. I mean, I can only assume that's what happened. One of the arena gates led me to a very strange dead end. Maybe I had to unlock something on the other side first, but the other way brought me to Dranglake Castle proper. I ran up to the big sucking giants at the front door, fed them both a nice heaping helping of souls, and they opened the way for me to chat with... Welliger? You poor man. I bet you got your fair share of swirlies for that name. He wasn't selling anything good, so I pressed on. I had to strip down to avoid my gear becoming broken, and I made my way to the King's Gate bonfire. If this game was nice, it would let me just fight the Watcher, Defender, and Nishandra, and I could be done. But this is Dark Souls 2. The game isn't nice. The Throne of Want fog gate led me to the Pursuer's Arena, where I was face to hole with the Giant Lord. I'm not sure if face to hole means the Giant Lord's gaping orifice on his head, or the fact that I'm pretty much just staring at his ass the whole fight, but it didn't last long, and the next gate brought me to the Undead Crypt. I dropped down to the bonfire, and the way out put me in the Skeleton Lord's Arena. And who might my Skeleton Lords be? Oh, just Veldstadt, Ava, and the Seaman of Dong. How wonderful. To my surprise, Ava goes down in 3 hits, and I had a false sense of comfort thinking this fight would be easy. I completely forgot about the ads. The ads that are going to make this fight absolutely unbearable. I still had no real heals besides my Estus flask, and let's just say planting my feet firmly in the ground to unscrew the lid on my Stanley and leisurely take a swig was not in the cards for me. I had the worst enemies from all parts of the game hot on my tail. Ava was fast and needed to be taken out first, but as soon as she's dead, the enemies start spawning. And if running for my life from a horde of angry ankle biters wasn't bad enough, I had to be aware of the ranged splooge attacks from the Dong itself. But worst of all were the Red Phantom enemies. And not just any Red Phantoms. A Red Phantom hedgehog from Elium Lois. Why have you forsaken me, From Software? Why do you smile as I suffer? Is this your intention? To break me down slowly? Whoever designed the coked out Shadow the Hedgehog here should be ashamed of the emotional damage they have caused me. I have had enough of this fight. I wasn't giving up, but something needed to change. I needed more heals. I checked my spells and saw a miracle that would do just fine, so I went back to the gutter, got a few souls, leveled up my faith, and equipped the miracle to get one cast of Great Heal Excerpt. I went back to the Skeleton Lords with my new secret weapon and quickly took out Veldstadt. Ava came over, and before she even knew what was happening, I sent her back to go be with the other Avas up above. I did my best to use the pillars in the arena to separate myself from the demon's ranged attacks, and when I got low, I used my new heal and then smoked on some dank herbs to get another cast. It wasn't pretty, but I ran around the arena slowly taking care of anything that was close by without having to put myself in grave danger. I got greedy for the kill on Mr. Dong, and then it was just me and about 20 of the worst enemies the game could cook up. It wasn't until I kicked the Hedgehog's can that I realized I forgot to leave the company of champions after farming for those faith levels. 20% less damage done and 50% more damage taken. You gotta love it. But I'm not a quitter. I'm a champion. Slowly but surely I kited the train of mobs around the arena, getting a hit in when I could, using my newfound faith to heal, and before long the Skeleton Lords went down. Unsurprisingly, one of the hardest bosses up until this point, even scaled for the early game arena. Immediately after, I was tossed into the arena of the Looking Glass Knight, and my opponent the Dragon Rider. I once again underestimated the early game boss and got reality checked harder than Nanny 911. I got the old rider stuck in the pillars for a safe heal and then locked in. And I was still feeling the effects of not leaving the Covenant. My bad. I had one more spice in my back pocket but wouldn't have an opportunity big enough to use it as well as the spell, so I tightened my grip on my sword and took down the Looking Glass Rider on the first try. Not too scary, just a normal Dragon Rider with, I don't know, like 10 times the damage. After 2 great fights in a row, well, 1 great fight and a tutorial boss, I was brought to Belfry Luna and yet another dead end. I finally had enough health to drop into the fire pit in the Forest of Fallen Giants, and without 4 flame salamanders trying to eat my ass, it's actually a pretty peaceful area. I got the heavy iron key and then made my way back to Mythos Arena where Ava was waiting. Again. A big cat in a poison pool, what could possibly go wrong? Greed. Greed is what could go wrong. I was poisoned and in a hurry to end the fight. I was spamming R1 as an AoE was being charged, and I died. While Ava was left with so little on the health bar, I thought it was some kind of sick joke. Try number 2 was a success. I mean, okay, do we need another narration of fighting Ava for the 4th time, or whatever it is? Dodge into the cat. Run away sometimes. Cry because you're poisoned the entire fight. And then you win. Boy oh boy, right after Mythos Arena, we have the Gank Squad. And if the original recipe wasn't bad enough, let's do the Executioner's Chariot, the Burnt Ivory King, and, what the heck, throw the Fume Knight in there. My goal was to separate the bosses. Creating 3 1v1s was much better than getting curb stomped by everyone all at once. I dropped the Fume Knight into one of the pits and baited Mr. Ivory into another, and then fought the Chariot one-on-one. This horse is nothing compared to the last one I fought, so it goes down with relative ease. I dropped into the pit with the Fume Knight, and although the damage was good, the close quarters made it a bit of a challenge. I did have one saving grace. I could retreat back to safety in order to get a free heal and then jump right back into the fray. This strategy was working well until the phase transition. I was on my way out to heal, but the AoE can go around corners. It took me a couple more tries to get all the bosses into their respective holes again, and I racked my brain to think of any way that I could cheese them without getting stuck. My pots did no damage, my grey bow couldn't shoot my poison arrows, and I threw some poop to no avail. Finally, I decided to pull out a faster weapon and cover it with rotten pine resin. It was a slow process, and quite an ugly one, but the rotten rapier was able to slowly but surely whittle down the Fume Knight's health bar, while the Burnt Ivory King listened and waited to share the same fate. I walked over to the Ivory King and waited for his tantrum to be over before I jumped into his hole. We've duked it out a couple of times in this run, and I was getting fairly comfortable with the moves. I was doing much better with this guy than the Fume Knight, and the new and improved Gank Squad goes down in 4 tries. This is really feeling like a boss rush mode. I entered the arena of Alana, and it was time to take out the Scholar of the First Sin, Aldia himself. Basically, it's like if the Bed of Chaos was a bit more of a boss. You have the small fireballs that you can strafe, you have the big fireball that you can run up to and punish him and then run back to strafe, and then you have the root attack that you can run around and strafe. Because he wasn't in his own arena, the teleport mechanic didn't work and he ended up in the same spot every time. Goodbye, Aldia. You'd think with Scholar in his name, he would, learn a couple decent moves. And another fog gate I couldn't get through. Awesome. There was only one place that I could think of, the greatest roadblock in the run, the 2 cats in the frigid outskirts that were somehow even worse than before. The old blue smelter demon in Veldstadt, the King's Discord kittens. The great sword was far too slow for this fight and I had to adapt. I had to become meta. I had to use the rapier once again. I covered the DPS machine in my toxic green goo and infected poison damage on contact like I was in a Magic the Gathering tournament. My strategy was simple: bring the blue smelter demon to the very edge of the arena and go to town, poking and prodding the big blue gaping facehole man until he was poisoned. The second poison proc had to line up perfectly. I wanted it to eat away at his health bar as I ran away like a coward. But if I had to fight both of these idiots at the same time, it would surely end in disaster, as it did many times before. I got the blue smelter's moves down pretty well, and the rusty knitting needle infected the demon with tetanus at just the right time as I made my sprint across the arena, and he fell to the ice. It was just me and Quasimodo. I heckin' love fighting Veldstadt. I played rather cautiously. This was my first time getting one of them dead, and I didn't want to choke. The rapier wasn't doing it for me anymore though, and I wanted my big damage back, so I swapped back to the tried and true greatsword. I took a few bells to the dome and backed off to heal. Feldstadt, being a gentleman, respected the pause, and then we continued going at each other. It was kinda hot. I greeted the win, and finally I was through. This probably took 25 or so tries. I don't know. I'm too lazy to count. I found myself in Huntsman's Copse once again, crossed a big scary bridge, and it was time for another blue smelter demon? What's going on? I re-equipped my rapier yet again and attempted to proc poison before the fight started, but it was no use. As soon as I activated the bosses, the Rotten dropped down from his balcony and it was instantly a 2v1. Lucky for me, compared to last fight, both of these chuds were squishy. I had no healing because I'm an idiot who just keeps trudging forward in randomizers, not knowing what lies ahead, but I was locked in for the fight, swiftly taking down the Rotten, and then it was simply a 1v1 with the Mad Cow. I remembered my 11 herbs and spices and cooked myself up one more cast of heal excerpt, but it's not like I needed it anyway. Who needs heals when you can just dodge? The passive damage from the blue flames was mildly concerning, but once I got the poison off, I knew I had it in the bag. Another smelter gets melted by my hand. I am at my limit for smelter demons. No more, please. I was wandering around minding my own business and paid another visit to Welliger, who just so happens to get extra inventory after you beat the Looking Glass Knight. And lo and behold, when I looked in his shop, it was the sweet, breathtaking sight of infinite life gems. We have finally solved our healing problem, only 17 hours into the run. This is my Lord Vessel moment. If you know, you know. Go watch the Dark Souls 1 randomizer. I went back through Drang Lake, fed a giant more souls so it would open wide and let me in, and I was going to say hi to Nashandra, but she was missing. The Twin Riders fog led me to a single rider in Feldstadt's arena. This guy wants to be a boss so bad, it's so cute. It's a shame I couldn't pull off Dragon Rider cheese in this run, but also using a weapon against this guy is basically a cheese itself. Slowly circle around, strafe the attacks, get cocky now that I have life gems and take some smacks to the ass. And then finally, smarten up, dial back the greed just a bit, and the Royal Dragon Rider gets a sword inside her. This fight led out right after Magus and the congregation, and I was finally able to be absolved of my sin. Thank you, Cromwell. I made my way down the spiky bridge and opened the door of the weird spider temple, and, well, that is quite the unfortunate room. After a long time of carefully kiting the enemies through the spikes, I was able to make my way up, through the spider webs, and then warped to Dark Lurker Najka. How fun. The Dark Lurker was day loitering and opened the fight with his signature orbital laser. He loved to spam all the magic in his arsenal, and I was doing my best to bait out the melee moves in order to counterattack. I got the boss to half health, and he split, and to my surprise, only the original could be attacked, not the clone. Must have had something to do with the randomizer. Whenever something goes wrong, blame the mod. That's what I say. The early game scaling removes the challenge from this boss, even with one clone being invincible, and I was able to take him out on the first try. I started celebrating, but for some reason the clone was attacking from beyond the grave, and I was rushed into the next fog gate. I took a brief pit stop in the dark chasm of old, said hi to Grandal, made it out to the Shaded Ruins bonfire, and then branched on this guy to get the Fang Key. I had to see my wife, and I shall be seeing her later, just up the road. I went through the foggy woods, took a fog gate to Harvest Valley, chatted up Cloanne, went through a gate in Earthen Peak, only to have a short layover in the Grave of Saints and go back to Earthen Peak. I dropped down to the central bonfire and took a fog gate to the Royal Rat Vanguard. Basically, how I assumed this worked is the game would pick an enemy, and then one of those enemies would have the health bar, just like the rats normally would. However, to my surprise, I guess bosses were on that enemy list, and it just happened to be Nashandra. Luckily, the super low defenses and early scaling meant each Nashandra went down in about 2 swings. But this small-ass boss room was a mess of lasers, scythe swings, and curse-giving orbs. I swiftly took care of the boss, but that didn't stop the Nashandra ads from raging on, and I almost went down to the EDM concert light show. All that turmoil just to be spit out once again in the Phrygian outskirts, and then hit with a dead end. Back in Earthen Peak, I took the Mytha Fog Gate to Elium Lois, and then ran for my life through hordes of upsetting enemies until I was met with another Fog Gate, and arrived in the memory of the Old Iron King, with the Burnt Ivory King as my opponent. And for those of you who don't know, Suralan, the boss that's supposed to be here, has a special little mechanic. If you kill him hitless, he has a special death animation that you saw earlier when I fought him, and for some unknown reason, blaming the randomizer again, the hitless flag causes a problem with the Burnt King here. You see, anytime I would get hit in the fight, the AI of the boss would just turn off, and he would just stand there. But you think I'm gonna take that? A free win? A cop-out? Absolutely not. I quit and re-entered the arena every time I got hit, because I was gonna do it hitless. It took around an hour. Dumb mistakes here and there. While they wouldn't cost me the fight in a normal run, they cost me the fight here. It was just practice for the Dark Souls 2 Deathless run, the hitless run, the SL1 run. I was actually having a blast. It felt really satisfying to be able to dodge, strafe, and learn the attacks a lot better than in my first playthrough. Maybe due to the fact that I had to restart more than 20 times, but who's counting? Not me, or I would have given you a more accurate number. On my final attempt, the worst thing happened. The boss was at a sliver of health, and I mistimed my roll, but quickly turned around and landed the final blow. I think that counts. I killed him before the lights weren't fully off upstairs. Sir Burnt King goes down to a lady in her underwear with a comically large sword. Sort of hitless. I had finally come to my breaking point, the point where I regret not writing anything down, the part where I blame myself and wander aimlessly through the game for a couple of hours just hoping for any sort of progression. I went back through each and every area, racking my brain for any fog gate I might have missed. I went to see Ornifex for comfort. I completed Grandal's trials, and I fought a ruined sentinel in Ava's arena. I promise it wasn't interesting. It was only one of them, and I could totally see it since I had the Eye of the Priestess. Finally, with all hope lost, I remembered. Back in the Shaded Woods, I had one more fog gate that I didn't check. The fog gate leading to Najka. And when I went in, my heart was filled with joy and then immediate despair. I had finally found the Throne of Want, and it was guarded by another blue smelter demon. Not only that, but Mytha was there too, and she was trying to distract me with head. Like she was throwing her head. This duo was the closest thing that Dark Souls 2 has to Ornstein and Smo, except they're both pretty fast. I was doing my best to try and separate them, but with their ability to close the distance fast and Mytha's magic projectiles, I was feeling a bit hopeless. They also had a shared health bar, and the Smelter Demon would power up when it wasn't even his turn. He wouldn't even be hurt. But I couldn't give up now. The end was in sight. Mytha was a quickie, and it was clear I had to take her out first. No more range, no more fear. But that was easier said than done when every time I went in for a hit, I was getting ruthlessly trampled by Eduardo from Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Not only that, but his sword has a 26-foot reach, I swear. It's hard to stay close to the Smelter Demon and dodge Mytha at the same time. It's almost like this fight would be a lot easier if there were pillars or something. I was thanking my lucky stars for the life gems, and I was getting close. I could feel it. At this point, I simply had to wait for the stars to align to get Mytha out of the picture. Because just me versus Smelter? That's a piece of cake by now. I felt the greed calling me like the Green Goblin mask, and I spammed R1 and finally took Mytha out. And of course, now that it was just me and the bull, it was an easy victory. I don't have much more to say at this point about fighting Smelter Demons. Or Mytha, really. Or, oh my goodness, Nashandra is Veldstadt. That's pretty anticlimactic. Let's see if we can get Aldia in the mix. I went back to where the Vendrick sewer was and decided that one giant soul was definitely enough to take him on, at least with a poisoned rapier. This fight lasted 9 minutes and 38 seconds, and I was doing less than 20 damage per hit with the rapier, my big damage obviously coming from the poison resin. Thankfully, the pursuer isn't that bad and the combos are fairly easy to stay away from, but if there's one thing I have a problem with, it's staying locked in for an extended period of time. A few poison procs later, I saw my durability getting lower and lower. I stopped attacking if I wasn't applying poison, and eventually the rapier was nearly broken and I had to switch to my greatsword. The last few minutes of the fight were painful. The health bar was low in terms of health, but not in terms of how many times I was going to have to hit this moron. But after the longest boss fight of the entire run, the pursuer goes down and Vendrick is taken out, allowing me to get one more boss at the end of the game. Psych, you thought. Well, I thought. I went back to Veldstadt ready to take on whatever boss was next, but turns out there are a few more requirements to taking on Aldia at the end. You have to light all the primal bonfires, and then talk to him at the start of the Dragon Shrine and in the Undead Crypt. And that sounded like a lot of work. Sometimes in life it really is about the journey and not the semi-disappointing final boss at the end of a randomizer run. The final boss falls to my greatsword, and I am very thankful that this thing carried me pretty much the whole run. Maybe that's why I had to fight so many smelter demons. It was a rite of passage for taking the sword. I took my seat on the throne of want, and after 22 hours and 180 deaths, I beat this Dark Souls randomizer. This was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed watching it. You can find all of the stream VODs on my other channel, Burd VODs, and maybe once the mods get a little more cooperative, we can add key items into the mix. Thank you so much for watching. Shout out to my members. I appreciate you, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you again for Whatnot for sponsoring this video. You can use my link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen to get $15 off your first purchase anywhere on the app.